My wife secretly stole $250, $0 from our joint account, lied about it for months, then suddenly filed for divorce claiming I was abusive. Now she's claiming full ownership of our family home worth $600, $0 in the lawsuit. I never thought I'd be the guy writing about how my wife turned out to be a lying, cheating piece of work. Honestly, I thought we had a solid marriage, 2 kids, a nice house, decent jobs. We weren't perfect, sure, but I trusted her completely. That is, until the day I stumbled across something that flipped my entire world upside down. It all started with a gut feeling, one I ignored for months because I didn't want to believe it. But then I found the proof, and everything changed in an instant. It was a Thursday evening when I came home early from work. I'd been feeling off all day, something gnawed at me, a strange feeling I couldn't quite put my finger on. The house was eerily quiet, which was unusual because was usually glued to her phone or watching TV by this time. I figured she was probably out with her friends or maybe shopping, so I didn't think much of it. But as I stepped inside, I noticed her purse was on the kitchen table and her phone was lying face down next to it. That was odd because she always kept her phone on her at all times, especially when she was out. I casually glanced at her phone and that's when I saw the texts. They weren't just friendly chats with some guy. These were flirty, suggestive messages. Nothing explicit, but enough to make my stomach drop. They'd been talking for months, I later learned, and she'd been sneaking around behind my back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My mind raced. How could she do this? How long had she been lying? I couldn't believe I'd missed the signs. Then I remembered the late nights she'd claimed were work meetings or girls' nights out. But she'd always come home with that weird smirk on her face, like she'd just pulled off a secret. She started spending more time away, claiming she needed space or was just stressed. But now I saw her texts with that guy, Mark. Some guy she met at the gym, talking about planning weekends away, secret meetups, and even sex. She was cheating on me and I had no idea how deep it ran. That night I felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. I wanted to scream, wanted to confront her right then and there, but I knew I needed to cool off. I stayed up all night, scrolling through her messages, trying to piece together how long she'd been lying to my face. It wasn't just the affair that tore me apart. It was the fact that she'd been lying about money too. Over the past few months, I'd noticed some strange withdrawals from our joint account, large sums that I couldn't explain. I thought maybe she was just spending more on shopping or bills, but now I knew better. Had stolen $250, $0 from us, money we'd saved for our kids' college funds, for vacations, for our future. I couldn't believe it. The next morning, I sat her down, trying to keep my voice steady, even though inside I was boiling. I showed her the messages I'd found and her face turned pale. She tried to deny everything at first, saying it was just harmless flirting, that I was overreacting, that I was paranoid. But I had proof, screenshots, bank statements, receipts. She couldn't deny it anymore. Her eyes darted around and I saw the panic in her face. That's when she dropped the bombshell. It's not what you think. I was just lonely. Mark made me feel alive again. It's not like I love him or anything. I swear I was going to tell you, but I didn't know how. Yeah, right. That was a load of crap. I felt numb. The woman I'd trusted with everything had been cheating on me, stealing from us, lying for months. The betrayal cut deep. I'd never felt so stupid, so naive. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see it coming. The worst part, she was trying to spin it as if I was the bad guy, accusing me of being abusive in her divorce filing. Another lie she's thrown in to manipulate the situation. She's trying to take everything, including the house, which is worth more than $600, $0. I was stunned. All this time I thought I knew her, but I was just blind. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying her words, her lies, the stolen money. I felt a mix of rage and despair. How could she do this? How could she destroy everything we built? I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what yet. All I knew was that my world was falling apart and was the one pulling the strings. I was just the guy left picking up the pieces, trying to understand how someone I loved could turn into this stranger. The next few days were a blur of anger, confusion, and planning. I couldn't believe she had the audacity to lie so blatantly, then turn around and file for divorce claiming I was abusive. That was her way of trying to manipulate the situation to make me look like the bad guy. But I knew better. I had the evidence, texts, bank statements, receipts, and I was determined to get to the bottom of this mess. I started digging into the bank account more thoroughly. It didn't take long to find out where the money went. Turns out had been siphoning off hundreds of thousands over the past year. She drained every last penny from our joint account 250, zero gone without a trace. I couldn't believe it. All that money gone and I never suspected a thing. She told me she was investing in her business, saving for the kids' college, but I found wire transfers and ATM withdrawals at luxury stores, high-end spas, and even several trips to Vegas. She'd been living a double life, and I was the last to know. I also discovered she'd been having an affair with Mark for months. I found explicit messages, photos, even hotel receipts. She'd been sneaking out late at night, claiming she was working late or meeting friends, but instead she was meeting him. The worst part, she told me she was just tired, stressed, and needed time for herself. Yeah, right. Meanwhile, she was out screwing around and stealing from us. I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. My trust was shattered, my heart breaking with every new piece of evidence. I knew I needed to confront her again, but this time I had a plan. I wanted her to see I wasn't going to be played for a fool anymore. So I set up a meeting, pretending I just wanted to talk about the divorce and the house. When she showed up at our place, I was ready. I had all the evidence laid out on the table, screenshots of her texts, bank statements, receipts. I didn't hold back. I told her I knew everything, the affair, the theft, the lies. Her reaction was classic. She tried to deny everything at first, but her face betrayed her. The guilt was plain to see. Then she started spinning her story. I was stressed. You never paid attention to me. Mark made me feel alive again, and it was just sex. It didn't mean anything. She even had the nerve to say she needed money to get away, that she was going to leave me anyway because I was too controlling. I couldn't believe her. She was lying so blatantly, trying to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her. I was furious. How could she sit there and lie like that? She stole our money, cheated on me, and now she's trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem. I told her I knew about her plans to take the house, that she was trying to cheat her way to the top, and that I wasn't going to let her screw me over. I told her I'd fight her in court if I had to, and I'd expose everything. I wanted her to know I wasn't going down without a fight. That confrontation was a turning point. I saw her panic, her desperation, and her anger. She accused me of being abusive, controlling, and mentally unstable. That was her new game, trying to paint me as the villain so she could win the house and the money. But I had legal counsel lined up, and I knew I had a case. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I'd fight for every cent, for the house and for my dignity. The emotional toll was intense. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly pretty broken. But at the same time, I felt a surge of resolve. I wasn't going to let her ruin me or take everything I'd worked for. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her lies went. She lied about everything: our marriage, her fidelity, her intentions with the house. It was as if I'd been living with a stranger all along. And now, I was finally starting to see her for who she really was. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. Over the next few weeks, everything moved at a breakneck pace. I engaged a lawyer, someone who specialized in divorce and asset disputes. The moment I handed over all the evidence I had gathered, texts, bank statements, receipts, it was like a switch flipped. She couldn't deny the theft anymore. The lawyer told me that I had a solid case to get at least some of that stolen money back, and that the court would see through her manipulative tactics. Still, I knew she'd fight dirty, especially over the house. That thing was worth over $600, $0, and she was claiming full ownership in the lawsuit. The first court hearing was a nightmare. Was there, looking smug and bitchy, dressed sharply, acting like she was the innocent victim. She kept claiming I was abusive, said I'd been controlling, that I'd yelled at her, even accused me of hitting her, which was a total lie. She spun stories about how I was emotionally unstable and how she was just trying to protect herself. Meanwhile, I sat there trying to keep my composure, feeling the rage simmer just beneath the surface. I had all the proof of her affair and theft, but I knew she'd try to twist things as much as possible. During the hearing, her lawyer argued that was entitled to the house because she claimed I'd been abusive and that she'd been a victim of my supposed controlling behavior. She even brought up a few supposed incidents that didn't hold up, things she exaggerated or outright fabricated. It was infuriating. I felt like I was fighting a battle against a snake, smooth, manipulative, and relentless. I had to sit there and listen as she painted a picture of herself as the wronged wife while I was the villain. It made my blood boil, but I had my own ace up my sleeve. I presented all the evidence of her affair and her theft. I showed the court the bank statements, the wire transfers, the hotel receipts. I told the judge how she'd secretly taken $250, $0 from us, money that was supposed to be for our kids' future. I explained how she'd lied about everything for months and how her claims of abuse were just her way of trying to gain sympathy and manipulate the system. The judge listened carefully, taking notes, and I could see her starting to see through lies. In the meantime, Side tried to spin her story even more. She claimed she was just trying to find herself, that she needed a fresh start, and that I was too controlling to let her do that. She said she'd never cheated until Mark, that she just wanted to feel alive again, and that she was done with this marriage. But I knew better. I knew the truth, the affair, the theft, the lies. I could see right through her act. This was about money, control, and her trying to escape her own failures by blaming me. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry all at once. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I was starting to see her for who she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman willing to do whatever it took to get her way. Every time she spun her lies, I felt more determined. I'd fought so hard to hold our family together, but now I realized she'd been tearing it apart from the inside. The court date was a wake-up call, and I knew I had to keep fighting for what was rightfully mine: my home, my money, my dignity. That day, I learned a hard lesson about trust and how fragile it can be. I'd gone from a guy who believed in his wife's honesty to someone who now saw that sometimes the people closest to you can turn out to be the biggest liars. But I also learned that standing up for yourself and fighting back is the only way to reclaim what's yours. No matter how much she tried to manipulate or lie her way out of it, I had the truth, and I was going to use it. The weeks that followed the court hearing felt like I couldn't get off. This lawyer kept trying to drag things out, filing motions, requesting delays, and spinning her own version of events to the judge. She was relentless, claiming that I was some kind of abusive monster who was trying to ruin her life. The irony was thick. This was the woman who had been secretly stealing from us, cheating on me and lying for months. Meanwhile, I was the one trying to keep my composure, trying to stay focused on the facts. I put together a detailed financial timeline, showing exactly how I'd taken that $250, $0. I had bank statements, wire transfer records, and even some hidden receipts I'd found after some digging. I also had proof of her affair, screenshots of texts, hotel check-ins, and photos from her social media. I presented all of this to my lawyer, who then filed it as part of the court case. The more I revealed, the more I saw her face fall. She knew she couldn't deny the evidence anymore, but she kept trying to spin it, claiming that I was controlling and abusive, trying to sway the court's opinion. The judge seemed to see through her act, though. When the next hearing came around, he ordered her to produce financial records and questioned her about the stolen money. That's when she broke down, claiming she needed the money to start fresh, that she felt trapped, and that she deserved the house because she was the primary caregiver for the kids. I was seething. She was trying every trick in the book to get what she wanted: our house, our money, and control over everything. But I was ready. I knew this was her last-ditch effort to manipulate the situation. Meanwhile, I was dealing with the emotional fallout. I'd always believed in the vows we took for better or worse, in sickness and in health. But her actions shattered that belief. I felt like a fool for trusting her. Every day, I'd wake up feeling betrayed, angry, and exhausted. It was hard to focus at work, hard to breathe sometimes. I kept replaying the moments when I first noticed her changing, her secretive phone, her late nights, the way she avoided my gaze. Now I knew why. She had been living a double life, and I was just the last to find out. The most shocking part came when she finally admitted to the affair during a recorded conversation I secretly made. I told her I knew about Mark, and her reaction was priceless. She tried to deny it, then finally broke down and admitted everything. She said she felt alive with him, that I was boring, that she needed to feel something real. It was as if she was trying to justify her betrayal, as if that could somehow make it okay. I was disgusted but also relieved. At least now I had confirmation. I'd known something was wrong for a while, but hearing her admit it made it real. The aftermath was a blur of legal battles and emotional pain. I decided I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. I hired a forensic accountant to trace the stolen money and prepare for the inevitable fight over the house. Kept trying to paint herself as the victim, claiming I was abusive and trying to control her, but the court was starting to see through her lies. I knew I had the evidence, and I was determined to fight for what was mine. If she wanted a war, I was ready for it. Deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. She'd hurt me beyond what I thought was possible, but I also realized I couldn't keep living in the past. I had to focus on moving forward, on rebuilding my life. I didn't want her to win, not over the house, not over the money, and certainly not over my peace of mind. I learned that trusting blindly can leave you vulnerable, but standing your ground and fighting back can give you a shot at reclaiming what's yours. I didn't know how the story would end, but I knew I had to keep fighting, because giving up wasn't an option anymore. The court battles dragged on, and every hearing seemed to be a new episode of my personal nightmare. The lawyer kept pushing her false narrative, painting her as the wronged wife, the victim of my supposed abuse, and claiming she deserved the house because she was the primary caregiver for the kids. Honestly, it was exhausting listening to her spin her web of lies. Meanwhile, I had a mountain of evidence backing up my claims. The bank statements showing the theft, the texts proving her affair, the receipts from her secret trips and spending sprees. The judge was starting to see through her act, but was nothing if not persistent. One of the most intense moments came when I submitted a detailed forensic report of the stolen money. It showed how she'd siphoned off nearly $250,000, money that was supposed to be for our children's future, for our retirement, for everything we had built. I had to sit there, watching her face turn pale as the report was read aloud in court. She tried to deny everything, claiming she'd borrowed the money temporarily, but the evidence was irrefutable. It was clear she'd planned this for months, maybe longer. Meanwhile, I was dealing with the emotional fallout. The betrayal cut deep. I'd always believed in the vows we took for better or worse, in sickness and in health. But her actions shattered that belief. I felt like a fool for trusting her. Every day I'd wake up feeling betrayed, angry, and exhausted. It was hard to focus at work, hard to breathe sometimes. I kept replaying the moments when I first noticed her changing, her secretive phone, her late nights, the way she avoided my gaze. Now I knew why. She had been living a double life, and I was just the last to find out. The final blow came when she filed her response to the court, claiming that I was emotionally abusive and that I had controlled her for years. She insisted she deserved full ownership of the house, arguing that she'd sacrificed so much for the marriage. I couldn't believe her audacity. It was a desperate attempt to turn the tables, to make herself look innocent while she destroyed us from the inside out. I knew I had to fight harder. I hired a private investigator to dig into her financials and her claims of abuse. What I found was terrifying. More lies, more manipulation, all designed to cover her tracks. Throughout all this, I kept questioning myself. Was I blind? Did I miss the signs? How could someone I loved so much do this to me? But I also realized I'd been a fool for trusting her blindly. Her actions proved she wasn't the woman I thought she was. She was a liar, a thief, and a manipulator. Still, I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her walk away with everything, our home, our savings, our dignity. I knew the fight wasn't over, but I was more determined than ever to see it through. In the quiet moments, I'd reflect on what I'd learned. Trust is fragile, and sometimes the people closest to you can turn out to be the biggest liars. But I also learned that standing up for yourself, fighting for what's right, and not letting someone else control your life is the only way to reclaim your dignity. I might have lost a lot, my sense of security, my peace of mind, but I hadn't lost everything. The truth was on my side, and I was going to do everything I could to make sure justice was served. Because at the end of the day, you have to fight for yourself, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. The final court hearing was the most intense experience of all. Showed up dressed to impress, her eyes colder than ever. She still tried to spin her stories, claiming she was the real victim, that I had controlled every aspect of her life, that she deserved the house because she sacrificed everything for our family. I sat there, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. I had laid out all the evidence, proof of her affair, the theft of our money, her manipulative lies, and I knew the judge could see through her act. When it was my turn to speak, I told the court everything: the stolen money, her affair, her lies, how she had betrayed the vows we made. I explained how her actions had shattered our family, how she had manipulated her way into the house, and why I believed I deserved to keep what was rightfully mine. I was calm but firm, delivering my truth with clarity. I saw her trying to interrupt, trying to sway the judge with her tears and false accusations, but I held my ground. I knew I had the facts on my side. The judge listened carefully, asking questions about the evidence, about the timeline, and about her claims of abuse. I answered honestly, showing that her accusations were just a desperate attempt to cover her own guilt. The judge then turned to her and told her that her conduct, stealing from the joint account, cheating on her husband, lying under oath, was highly inappropriate, and that her claims of abuse lacked credibility. It was a moment I'd been waiting for. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. The judge awarded me full ownership of the house, citing her theft and deception as grounds. The judge also ordered her to pay back the stolen money, which she had no way of denying anymore. Face twisted with rage and frustration, but she knew she'd lost. Her final attempt to manipulate the situation was futile. As I left the courtroom, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Relief that justice had been served, but sadness for the loss of what I thought was a life built on trust. In the aftermath, I started rebuilding my life. I moved out of the house, which was legally mine now, and began the long process of healing. The financial damage was significant, but I was determined to recover. I filed for divorce, and the process was brutal, but I stayed focused on protecting my children and myself. I realized I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control how I moved forward. Looking back, I learned that trust can be a fragile thing, easily broken by lies and betrayal. I also learned that standing up for yourself, no matter how hard it gets, is the only way to reclaim your life. Actions taught me a harsh lesson about the importance of being vigilant, of not ignoring the small signs that things aren't right. I hope anyone reading this understands that you can't always see the truth coming, but when you do, you have to face it head on. Protect yourself, fight for what's yours, and never let someone else's lies define you. I may have lost my marriage, but I found my strength in the end. That's what truly matters.